Hello, and welcome to Say Hi to the Future, a podcast aimed at highlighting the human side of human ingenuity, clever, inventive, and original thinking. My name is Ken Tencer, curator of Say Hi to the Future and CEO of Spyder Works Inc., a leading business consultancy for mid-market organizations and entrepreneurs globally. Today, we're going to be changing things around a bit. I thought it would be a good idea to share more about who I am, what Say Hi to the Future is, and what I'm hoping to achieve with this platform. So I'm putting myself in the hot seat, and my good friend and longtime editor, Rick Spence, will be interviewing me. Rick is a business journalist, consultant, and speaker specializing in startups, innovation, and social entrepreneurship. He is the former editor and publisher of Profit, the magazine for Canadian entrepreneurs. And for 15 years, he wrote a weekly column on entrepreneurship and innovation for the National Post and Post Media newspapers across Canada. Rick is currently host of the Startup Canada podcast and a senior editor at Corporate Knights, the magazine of clean capitalism. A longtime board director, he previously edited the University of Toronto magazine and director, the Journal of the Institute of Corporate Directors. All that being said, Rick is the best person I could think of to be doing this with me. It's going to be a great conversation. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show. Good morning, Rick. Welcome to the show.
Morning, Ken. Thanks. It's great to be here.
And here we are. We're going to flip it around where you're going to be asking me the questions today, like I've become accustomed to with you for about 10, 15 years now.
That's right. We've worked together a fair bit on a number of cool Spyder Works projects over the years, but I'm really excited to hear a little bit more about Say Hi to the Future. I think that the most interesting part is that hi doesn't just mean hello, although I think it does mean hello. It means hello, welcome, come on in. Let's get to know you better. But hi also stands for something, right?
It does. It stands for human ingenuity. And for me, that's clever, inventive, and original thinking. It's the people that you want to talk to, the interesting ones who have these bizarre ideas or off the wall ideas, but they end up changing the world in somehow.
Yeah. So tell us what human ingenuity is. And this isn't just a scripted question. I think I know, but I want to know what Ken thinks it is.
Yeah, I think it's about recognizing opportunity where others don't. And I think it's finding ways to solve the problems or to address those opportunities in ways that others won't. And, I think for in some ways, it's a simile, if you will, for being an entrepreneur. Because if you look at the entrepreneurs who've really broken through and changed the world, things like printing presses, going back all the way to there, going back to flight, and why two brothers thought that they could fly and change the world that way. I think it's really, human ingenuity is really a testament to all of those things that tell you something isn't impossible, but you don't care.
Right. But that makes it sound a bit like innovation. And I think you're going, and what makes this exciting to me, and I've been involved in the innovation ecosystem for years, you're taking it beyond that to, like, I think a lot more fields of human behavior and interaction. It's not just business. It's not just putting out a better product.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I think you're bang on with that. I mean, ingenuity is any and every field. Ingenuity is, how do we get fresh water to areas of the world that doesn't have it? Ingenuity is, how do we create sustainable farming or the ability to grow food where we otherwise can't? It's absolutely not just about business, and it's importantly not just about business, because I think that the human in human ingenuity is the same as human in humanity. It's how we can help one another. And yes, some of it is for profit. Absolutely. I mean, entrepreneur, 27 years, that's in my head. But no, I think what's really drawn me to this and to pushing this platform is the ability, and I'd say at this time in my career, to say, how do we make things bigger than just for profit? How do we make things about humanity? How do we make things about recognizing that there are issues in the world with our ecosystem, how we live, how we're going to eat, how we breathe, and put our heads together to solve that, and maybe more importantly, to celebrate the people who are solving those unsolvable challenges.
Right. So, I mean, you're bringing together um, business and the future and innovation, but also, I mean, creativity in so many forms. And I think that's exciting because people who don't care about business still want to know what's going to change in the arts, in fashion, in science, in medicine, in so many different ways. And I think that the key thing is that all of these things, and we've learned it, I think, during the whole COVID pandemic, everything is intertwined. We can't go to restaurants unless science comes up with a vaccine.
Yeah.
But we can order stuff online, but some people are better at delivering it than others. So it's a full court press on the future. We have to move forward together in so many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, though, it's a full court press on the future, but I think the first step is accepting the future. And this whole idea of say hi to the future came up, like I think most good or great things in our lives, just purely accidentally. It's crazy. I'm 55 and I've always wanted to do my doctorate. So I'm doing it through an executive stream out of Paris through New York through a company, a university called ISM. And we were sitting in a class that was talking about artificial intelligence versus emotional. And of course, they start talking about automation and how our jobs are going to be taken away from us and all those things. And of course, in my entrepreneurial way, I said, well, I've got a solution. So turn them off. We turned the computers on. We created AI. We created these things. If you're really that bothered by them, turn them off. And then my inside voice said, and while you're at it, just take the wheels off your car, phone 4 friends and tell them to grab an axle, move you around. And
that used to work. They did that a lot in Rome.
They did that for a lot of many centuries. And my point was this, is that you have to accept the future. You have to accept change. And I don't care if it's in our personal lives, in business, in the social economy, you have to accept that things are changing, embrace it, and then the opportunity to be part of the change will come.
Can you give me an example of that? I mean, the idea of just sitting back and accepting the future scares me a little bit, because there's a lot of different players and not all of them are taking this broadly humanistic social benefit approach that you're looking at. But it sounds like you're saying we've got to embrace computer hacking in order to understand how to deal with it and how to defeat it.
Yeah, and I think that's right on the point. Accept and use things for societal benefit. And when I think back to some of my first conversations around thinking about say hi, it was during obviously the start of the pandemic. And what really struck me is that we always sort of had this innate understanding that we were connected to people through the internet. And what we didn't understand is that 7.5 billion people could be impacted by the same singular event over 30 days around the world. And that said that, our connectivity or interdependence on everybody on Earth is absolute. And that's why it was, I think the opportunity was then to say, oh boy, we really can't change ourselves. And by changing ourselves, by changing things that we see, we can have almost an immeasurable impact. And through the pandemic, I choose my words very carefully because it's hard to say that anything good comes out of so much pain and death. But when you look at it, as individuals, we've learned how to accept change. And in the past, whether it's individuals or governments or companies, the whole notion of change or transformation has been a brick wall. It's painful, it's scary, but it's necessary. And through the pandemic, how we speak with each other, how we interact with each other, how we bring things to market, how we help one another, it completely changed. And coming out of it, I really hope we don't lose that. I hope we don't lose the fact that we now know that change is achievable, and it's painful, okay, but we get through it and we thrive.
Yeah. I heard an older person the other day help a younger person through a Zoom problem. And I thought that was beautiful, because sometimes, the cliche is that the older generation has to be dragged kicking and screaming into technology. And in general, I think that's probably truer of them than of the younger generation. But to see an older person, this person was over 60, um, kindly and patiently helping someone communicate, a much younger person communicate on Zoom, was incredibly heartwarming, as well as cliche bending. So yeah, I think that we've all had to change, and for the most part, it's been a positive experience. We've rediscovered board games and puzzles. We've rediscovered family time. We've rediscovered time without family with the door shut, and that's fine. And what gets me is, of course, that whole international effort to develop the vaccines. Think of it being done by people social distancing at the same time as they're inventing new technologies, pushing the whole gene sequencing thing further than it's ever been pushed before, and coming out and with a product and doing the testing within 9 months. I mean, that's inconceivable. The old minimum was like 5 years. So the what we need is to be able to have this attitude and not need a pandemic to force us into it, to say there's so many great things coming down the pike here. Let's embrace those.
Mhm.
And by embracing those, it will also help us be on guard for the things that are less promising. And obviously, the multiple voices on the internet. We used to say anyone can talk to anybody now, and that's a beautiful thing. And now we know that disinformation thrives in that. So, that's one of those unintended consequences that we want to say goodbye to rather than hi. But until you've studied it, and most people haven't studied it yet, so we're still potential victims of disinformation. But the more we know about it, the more that society and good institutions, well-meaning institutions, can help us find solutions to it.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, connectivity is definitely a double-edged sword. And I think that more than ever, the value systems of humanity, if I can go that far, but the value systems of humanity that we all share, boy, do they have to be bolstered and reinforced, because everything that is invented or created, I think since the start of time, can be used either for good or for not so good. And it's amazing to me too how quickly people jump on the negative. It's kind of painful to watch in some ways, but hopefully we find a way to regulate. And I'm not just saying government, just we as a society learn how to regulate our own actions and our own thoughts and our own beliefs, and use it in a positive way, use it for the good. And I think, to the point of, again, of human ingenuity, why it's not just about businesses, is the way we work and share and connect has limitless potential to help us as a future society. And the really interesting thing for me is I like the concept of Gen C or Gen Connected. And we talk so much about the next generations, whether it was
Sorry, who's Jen?
Ge- Generation C?
Okay, Generation C. Who's Generation C? Generation
Generation C is
Connect.
generation connected.
Okay.
And I like to look at, and the really cool thing about it, to your point of, you know, the older individual helping the younger individual connect, is those who are connected don't have to be of a certain age. You have to be of a certain mindset. That connectivity, understanding, empathy are all important, and they're important to all of us. And the generation, like my kids' generation, the millennial generation, they get knocked. I mean, just as frankly, we got knocked. And I think that they have embraced communication and connectivity in a way that obviously we never could, but they are using that connectivity to save the world's problems. I mean, when you look at how many of the younger generation are looking at the foods that we eat, the preservation of water, of air quality, et cetera. I mean, we actually have an incredible generation coming up behind us that cares about humanity in a very positive way and uses connectivity in a very positive way. And I, hope for the best, plan for the best. And yes, whether it's formal or informal regulation, yeah, let's make sure that the disinformation just doesn't get out there.
Right. Can we just go back a little bit here? I do I host some podcasts for Startup Canada, as you probably know, and I like asking people about their journeys. So tell me a little bit about young Ken and how you got here, where you're, trying to spark a. I think you were pretty heads down business guy in your youth, and now here you are trying to spark a movement that's not just about business but also about trying to help shape a better future for everybody.
Yeah, I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and my wife's family are entrepreneurs. So, and you've known me a long time, and yeah, young Ken always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I mean, even in summer jobs in university, I created some of my own through my own business.
Tell me about a couple of them.
Well, one, I mean, there's this whole celebrate local that you hear about today.
Say
But
hi to your community.
yeah, but when I was 17, I actually started designing and printing and circulating local maps for local businesses when I was living up in Ottawa. And I was looking at areas like the Glebe in Ottawa, which had incredible, self-owned shops. And I thought, hey, why aren't they doing more advertising? Why aren't they getting people from other parts of the city to come here? So I guess, entrepreneurship and connectivity came to me early. And I've always pushed through it. And yes, some of it has been in more commodity-based manufacturing or real estate. But now with Spyder Works and with this platform, sure, we have the opportunity to build business and help businesses build themselves. But part of business today is diversity and inclusion. It is corporate social responsibility, and I think that what we're doing fits in perfectly within a business consultancy and for the clients and the people who listen, who are purely business minded, because I think today that whether it's of your own volition or your next gen's volition, helping people is actually becoming the gold standard in business, and hopefully in society in general.
I'm writing that down. I like that. Helping people is becoming the gold standard in business. Tell us an example of that where you see that happening.
Yeah, I think that goes anywhere from time. I think that goes in a lot of different ways, Rick. I think that one of our clients right now has a huge project to choose a charity that the thousands of employees will be able to connect with and contribute to and galvanize them. So, it helps people, it helps humanity, but it makes you feel good about who you're working with and who you're working for. And I think that's a great thing. And I think it also opens a door to recognizing that if your employees are stimulated, if they're galvanized, if they believe in something more than just coming to work to make a dollar that day, they'll actually become better at the business side of it, because they just feel better about what they're doing. And in our company, one of the things that I really push, and Ali Taha, who's listening, who's producing this segment, he knows as well. I want everybody in the company to be learning something every year. And some people have said to me, what, learning about business? I said, no, it can be pottery, it can be business, it can be anything. And they said, well, what does pottery, how would that help you? And I said, well, if my team is more stimulated and happier and engaged, and believes that work is more than what we do from 9 to 5, it's what we do for one another and for others at large, then I think you're just going to have a much better culture, a much more motivated culture, and frankly, a much more stimulating culture to come to work to.
Right. I mean, I can also think of a bunch of other reasons to do pottery, and I know nothing about pottery, but excuse me, the idea that the patience required for pottery, the sense of excellence as you try and create better and better and more unique and more fragile pieces. There's a sense of there's an iterative innovation approach to pottery, in that if you don't like where it's going, you just stop the wheel, crush the stuff, and start again. And I mean, yeah, you chose that example as something out of the blue, I presume. But I think, yeah, almost anything out there, whether it's sports, whether it's a hobby, whether it's an interest to getting out and walking more and getting more in touch with your community or nature or whatever. There are so many ways we can increase our satisfaction. And it's great that companies are starting to realize this. There is a talent shortage, and they're studying motivation now more than ever before. Motivation used to be, you didn't rivet enough rivets last week. And we know that because we can measure that, but they can't measure the knowledge worker nearly as well. They,
Right.
they try. They have cameras on them now that tell how, when they're at their desk and count their bathroom breaks. But that has nothing to do with productivity, and they can't measure that. So the only tool that employers have left is motivation, is culture, and thankfully we're seeing them catching on to that. And I think the future for businesses that do that is pretty great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you look at even how, capital industries, I mean, venture capital or startup, and as I said, you oversee the Startup Canada podcast. If you look at, how many are galvanized around things like clean tech, you can absolutely marry good business with good humanity, if you will, very easily, and you can fund it. And it's a terrible thing to say, maybe, but at the end of the day, business is, as we know, it is about profit. So on the business side of Say Hi to the Future, it's actually embracing the fact that what you're doing is at the same time good for your business and good for the world around you. And the reality is, we didn't, I don't even look back 30, 40 years and say, why didn't we do it then? Why didn't we have this inclusive approach to people and who we are? And it's tough looking back and seeing maybe all the mistakes or all the things that we neglected to do. But again, whether it's business or the social welfare or social being of who we are, I think we're waking up now, and let's applaud it, and let's never let ourselves go back. And that's honestly, as an entrepreneur, that you make so many mistakes in so many parts of your life over time, and if you let yourself get mired in the past, you're not going to get out of the rut.
Right. Let's talk about innovation for a minute. Switch it back to like the idea of business creating futures for themselves by coming up with more innovative products and services that will help the company sustain itself and grow. Why are we all why are so many companies so bad at innovation? It's such a challenge. The failure rate of new products has never really budged from me 70-80%.
Yeah.
Um, what makes innovation so hard?
Well, one, I think it's the mindset. What you just said is, 70, 80% fail. How about 20, 30% succeed? I always talk about,
Well, that makes it all better.
well, it does. Look in baseball, if you hit the ball 3 times out of 10, you're going to the Hall of Fame. Guaranteed. If you do that over a 15-year career, people are celebrating you. In business, if we go 3 for 10, people are hitting their heads against the wall saying, why are we so useless? So what is the real expectation? And that's where I always start with companies, is understanding what your expectation should be. How much success can or will you have, and how much success do you need to make your innovation efforts worthwhile to your company? The second thing that companies absolutely don't do, in my mind, or don't do very well, is understand portfolio management. Everybody thinks of innovation as, the big swing home run. And some people go, when I give them examples, they go, that's not innovation, it's too small. And I've seen a lot of definitions of innovation, but I've never seen one that has a dollar figure attached to it. You don't need to spend a lot of money. You need to make a difference. You need to generate profits with it. And sometimes those can be small ideas that do a heck of a lot. And so I think most companies have to start understanding small, medium, large innovations, short-term, mid-term, long-term thinking. Build a grid. Make sure you've got different opportunities in different parts of the grid. And yeah, 3 out of 10 for your long-term innovations, that might be phenomenal. It might be phenomenal. And I say that too, because you also have to know when to cut bait. And very few companies at each gate have really definitive, okay, this isn't going forward. We're not pivoting, we're not swiveling, we're just not doing it. And I think you have to be super clear in your process and your thinking, because it's hard. It's hard to throw away your efforts. It's hard to walk away from money you've invested. But that old adage of don't keep throwing good money after bad. That's important.
Right. So what what you're talking about is really shifting the focus from individual products or projects into a whole company-wide, industry-wide process, to look at it as not as a whole bunch of, we're there, these guys are doing this, these guys are doing that, these guys are doing that over here, but a whole process that involves everyone in the organization in a sort of continuous improvement process, as opposed to, oh, that's our innovation team behind that closed door, no one knows what they do.
Yep. No, absolutely. And I mean, it's funny because I'm heading over in October. I'm teaching a workshop to international MBAs on innovation management in the university that I'm attending in Paris. And the first thing that I put up, I talk about innovation management, but I ask, what's your innovation portfolio? How do you develop it? How do you develop the process that feeds your portfolio? No different than any other investor model. You don't invest in one stock in your stock portfolio. Why would you invest in 1 or 2 things in your innovation portfolio? In your stock portfolio, you look at high risk, mid risk, and low risk. Why aren't you doing short, medium, and long-term thinking like that with your innovation portfolio and invest accordingly? And if you marry that, if you layer on the right process, the further along you go, the risks get lessened as you start to come up with more capital. And the other thing that you're hearing, because we're talking about process over time, this isn't a one-off endeavor. so many companies still don't have somebody who oversees innovation specifically. And, it might roll into a marketing and innovation or an R&D function or whatnot. Innovation, the new improved better that you're bringing to market is what's going to generate revenues tomorrow. Why isn't that a function within your company? Why isn't that front and center within your company? And unfortunately, it still isn't.
Are you, can you think of any examples of companies that have actually, here's a motto for you, put the future first? I mean, are there some that are getting this right in terms of saying, yeah, we're going to spend most of our lives in the future, our careers in the future. Let's treat this as a really important environment worth studying and preparing for. Who's getting it right?
Okay, this is maybe too easy of an answer, but I'll go back decades. I mean, take a look at what Amazon has done. Now, but could you imagine? I mean, I think they came online about 6 months or so after Netscape, which was the first, web browser. Could you imagine having been in the pitch meeting saying, I want to go online 6 months after the web was not created, but commercialized, and I want to sell books, and eventually I want to sell everything? I mean, how ridiculous must that have sounded decades ago? But that's future thinking. Look at Netflix, and even more importantly, look at Blockbuster. If you can remember, I mean, if you don't know them, Google them. Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy Netflix for $50 million. And they said, no, I think it's something like 1,200 would be worth like 1,200 times more today. I forget the exact number, but it was insane. And that's the difference between getting stayed and satisfied with who you are, a Blockbuster, and looking at the future of entertainment, not TV, but entertainment, and the power of being online that Netflix obviously showed. So, all these industries today that are coming up quickly, they're really about future thinking.
But have they got the process right? I mean, do you have any insight into companies? Who's putting a chief future officer in their executive suite? Are people doing that? I mean, it's easy to take an entrepreneur who has been very successful when we look back and say, okay, Jeff Bezos is incredible, and I think he is, although he has a few blind spots. But is the business literature coming up with new solutions to help companies develop future-oriented cultures? Is anyone even studying, other than you, studying these questions?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, there's a lot of, I'm not a futurist, so a lot of people look at the future. There's a lot of great companies now with chief innovation officers. I think they're the ones that are growing and always coming out with new. And it's funny, but I look at Best Buy as well, and you look at it, you say, look at their process and how they develop things from inside. I was contacted by a newspaper just as they were going through their real struggles, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, and the reporter really wanted me to say something negative, like they're going to go out of business or it's terrible, blah blah, because that's what everybody was saying. And I said, I think they're brilliant, and I'll tell you why they're brilliant, because I'm walking through the airport in Toronto about that time, and I saw a little Best Buy vending machine, with ear pods and whatever, things that I might have forgotten as a traveler. And I said, what?
You can deposit $400 into that machine and get like a video recorder.
Absolutely. But I said to him, this tells me that they realized years ago that their eyes were open to the future years ago, and they're coming out with some great ideas. And they did. And look at them now. And Best Buy isn't just about electronics. It's just the best place to buy things. And you can go into the store and pick it up. So you know what? It's not even hindsight. That is a real look at a company that was saying, hey, we've got to try different formats. We've got to try different ways to engage with the customer and leverage what we have. And they were future thinkers. And I mention it because obviously my thoughts to that journalist that day never got published. Wasn't what they were looking for, thought I was crazy, but obviously not. And that's what you got. For me, that's what you have to look at when you're looking at companies and how well they're prepared for the future. Doesn't mean that every chief innovation officer or futurist is going to be brilliant, but at least if you're thinking that way, at least if you're thinking about it and approaching it as a discipline, you have a shot.
And we'll remind our listeners that Best Buy and other retailers make a huge amount of their profit, not from selling product, but from selling those extended warranties. And, that's a way of making the future friendlier. That's understanding their customers and giving them peace of mind that they need. And, how important was that innovation at one time? So to really think about your customer needs, to understand where their heads are at, to me, that's still really the secret of innovation. So let's just get back to saying hi to the future. What is this program going to look like as it rolls out?
You know why it's a tough question? Because as I said, it came to me out of a discussion that I had in a class as part of my doctorate. We started writing about it and we got incredible impressions around the writing. We started podcasts and we have the invitation to do the radio segments. We are going to have our first conference, Say Hi to Columbus, in Columbus, Ohio, with the Columbus College of Art and Design, November 12th of this year. So it's sort of taking on a life or a community life of its own, where people really want to step back and say, okay, what is human ingenuity about? And for me, this is a tough one on the radio, but you've got binary thinking, which is zeros and ones, and cognitive, where if you like this, you probably like that. You have emotional, and then I call gut, and the gut is actually a real organ that sort of, when you have those things of gut feeling or gut instinct, it comes from an actual feeling built on what you've internalized over the past. So human ingenuity, what separates us from AI today, or artificial intelligence, VR, AR, whatever, is the emotional thinking, the empathy, and the gut thinking. So I think what I'm saying to people is embrace the difference between emotional intelligence or human intelligence and artificial intelligence. Learn to work together, learn to leverage one another, and that'll create a better future in all areas of business and society. In that conversation, Rick, it's the volume is being turned up very quickly. So I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but I just think, it's one of those things that people have said, yeah, let's think about what's important, what we're good at, and how to get there. Let's take down those stop signs of, oh, we're going to lose our jobs, and say, let's put up those green lights going, yeah, we really have an opportunity to leverage artificial intelligence, or again, AR, VR, whatever it is, and do so much better for ourselves, for our families, for our world.
Right. Are there specific outputs that you hope that this movement will have in terms of, I don't know, research or publications / videos? Are there specific areas that you hope that the research and the energy will focus on?
So I think there's two streams. There's one, which is for me, but to be shared, but it's through the doctoral research and dissertation, and it's going to be around human ingenuity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. So it's really about the human component of innovation, how we can help to come up with ideas, how we can galvanize teams that come up with better ideas, and galvanize a process around, how do we make our future better, or be how we learn to take control of our own future rather than let it happen to us. So I think on the research side, yeah, I do have the opportunity to study and work with companies and associations or institutions around the world to understand what human intelligence is about and how we can help progress and how breakthroughs happen. On a very pragmatic side, yeah, I think that this program is going to help inform and help companies or institutions build much better innovation processes or programs. And why? Because they will learn to engage more people. And they will learn how to engage those people in ways that are better and easier and processes that are more focused from initial ideation to getting something into the market. Maybe more quickly, but I think with more certainty and more focused.
Wow, wow, that's really interesting. So how can people like find out more? You've got a bunch of blog posts. Are there a couple you could point people to as saying, here's where you can see this really coalescing, and here's where you can see the best current iteration of Say Hi to the Future?
Rick, I think the easiest way to find out more is to go to LinkedIn and look up Say Hi to the Future. It's got its own page. You'll see our blogs there. You'll see our long form writing. You have links to the video, and you will get all the information on our first conference, again, coming up in Columbus, Ohio, Say Hi Columbus, on November 12th.
And how would you like to see people or organizations get involved with Say Hi to the Future?
We're asking a lot of companies just to send their best and brightest. Everybody talks about high potentials, and I think that high potentials are, for me, they're people who can think in the abstract. Abductive reasoning. I mean, if you think, what's abductive reasoning? It's, you go to a doctor and you provide symptoms, and they have to figure out the root cause and or how to make you better. Ditto with a jury. You don't get all the information. You got to piece it together. Well, the future is the same way. It's changing so quickly that, to me, brilliant, high potential people have to be able to think in the abstract, have to be able to put things together and reason their way to opportunity.
All right, thank you for this. I think it's about time somebody stood up for the future and said, you know what, it's going to be good, it's going to be bad, but we have the ability to shape it and make sure that the good stuff prevails. So good luck with all of this. I'll look forward to watching how it goes.
Thanks, Rick, and thanks for your time today.
Okay, thank you.